Welcome back, David, from your castle. I wanted to pick up your brain on something that we kind of talk about all the time, but flip it upside down and talk about electromagnetic fields as recovery tools or even medicine, because we know that there are things out there that can be used to heal, red light therapy equipment, MBST, where you have specific frequency sound for each joint or each cartilage targeted at you to heal that specific place, and so on and so forth. So, what's happening there? We both know that you can even use these things to boost creativity and so on and so forth. So, all the videos we make out, it's as like avoid them at all cost, which is not entirely truth if you actually listen to our videos. It's just being specific at what times you are exposing yourself and for how long. So what can people take away from this? And it's never going to go away, but do we know what kind of frequencies are good for us at what times? And anything that comes into your mind that you think should be kind of put out there for people to use this not only smart, but also strategically placed maybe in some kind of daily routine to boost their performance, boost their ability to recover, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so let's first talk about what frequency, like what range of frequencies are being used by the body. Right? So I'm gonna show a diagram here real quick when you give me a moment. Um, let's see here. Here we go. So right here, I have a picture of a mitochondria and also a bar of wavelength frequency. So everybody has to, people need to grasp that a frequency is just a wavelength that's measured in nanometers. And they are operating in a very, the body is operating in a very narrow band of frequencies, right? And the band starts right around 200. Some speculation that it would be at 100 nanometers per light, or nanometers per wavelength. So that's over here on this side of the spectrum. And it goes all the way up right around 700 to 800, right? Now, there are specific structures in the body, for example, red blood cells that operate, they have a sharp cutoff at 600 and they go all the way down to 200 or 100. So their operating frequency is between these right here. Now, if you
When you
notice,
say operating frequency, can you expand?
yeah, so they collect light at a very specific frequency and then re-emit that light at another frequency inside of this band, right? So this is what I mean. Hemoglobin gets stabilized in the green band range, and then it absorbs everything above that and then cuts off at 600. It re-emits light, right? Blood re-emits light in the UV range down here in the UV range. Why is that? And those are called biophotons or UPEs, ultra weak photon emission, right? And that's in literature by Fritz Popp, Alexander Gurwitch, Roland Van Wyck. These are all scientists that have studied this type of thing, not in terms of biology, but in terms of biophysics, right? These are physicists that are studying these types of things. You're not going to find any of this type of stuff in biology literature or chemistry literature or any of that type of stuff because those people aren't focused on what makes what are the physics that makes things work. They're focused on the chemistry of things and the things that are in textbooks. But the thing is, there's a controlling mechanism above that that makes those work, and that is light, specifically frequencies of light, right? So the reason why your red blood cells do this type of thing is they are communicating sunlight into the inner parts of your body, like the mitochondria and things of that nature. Um, And deuterium in the blood, I believe we talked about that in our last video, is used to re-emit UV frequencies. If there wasn't deuterium in the blood, the blood would not be able to re-emit these lower frequencies, short wavelengths of light, which is UVB, UVC. So what I'm telling you, right, if you kind of grasp this, is that your body re-emits light that's more powerful than sunlight. For example, UVC light 200 to 280 does not exist on this planet. It's filtered out by the atmosphere. But we know that 200 and 280 nanometer light is absorbed by certain things in the body. So, and I'll see if I can find right here, right? So we know for that phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, histidine, and here's their absorption spectrum. See, they absorb between 220 and 300, right? Tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine, histidine. These are all have absorption spectras in this range, 220 to 200, upper 200, it's close to 300. That light doesn't exist on this planet, right? That should really, really be interesting to people, because if it doesn't exist on this planet, how are these absorbing it? The reason is your body is acting like a semiconductor. Melanin is a semiconductor. Hemoglobin is a semiconductor. These are all semiconductors. What they mean is they transform energy from a higher state to a lower state in terms of nanometers. But in frequencies, it's actually opposite. The shorter the wavelength, the more powerful it is. It just can't penetrate as far. It can't go as far, right? And so that is how the body is using frequencies positively. See, another one right here, leptin, for example, this is a big one. Leptin controls a lot of things. There's such a thing called a leptin melanocortin pathway. And leptin is a communication hormone. Most often in literature, anybody's going to be able to find this. Leptin communicates to the body how much body fat you have on you. And then in knowing that, the body upregulates feeding behavior, activity behavior, energy expenditure, all of that type of stuff. That is a 220 nanometer absorption spectrum. So if your body is not able to take higher frequencies of light, UVA, UVB, which does exist on this planet, and transform it down into more powerful light in the UVC range, then these structures in the body, leptin, these amino acids, they are not going to be able to do their job correctly, right? And so what that means is the frequencies of light is really what we need to focus on. And then right at like violet and blue right down here. So the visible spectrum is, or in other words, what we can see is only between 400 and 700. Everything below 400, we can't actually see, right? But our body
You are
uses it.
opening such a kind of worms now. It's like, okay,
Well, yeah, if you think about it, right? So the full spectrum, the full electromagnetic field goes all the way down to like 10 nanometers of light, which is like gamma rays, X-rays, that type of stuff, all the way up to like 3,000, which is just heat, right? That's infrared and beyond, right? So we only see between 400 and 700. We see a sliver of what actually is out there, right? Now, we know this from animal studies, like, for example, bugs. Bugs can see UV light, right? Bugs can physically see UV light. So that's actually, and we know this, right? There's like UV lights that you can put out, the little zappers, and the bugs get attracted to it and they get zapped. The reason why they're going to that light is because they can see UV light and they're attracted to UV light. Anything that is emitting a lot of UV light is attractive to them. And so um, that tells you that we are very myopic. Our eyes are very specialized to only see this little narrow section of visible light. but our biology is optimized below those frequencies. So in other words, your body is running on things you cannot physically see, right? But all of these frequencies are used by the body. And so we're just going to get into like all the positive frequencies that can do that. Um, Here's a pretty good little diagram of how light, specific frequencies of light, can penetrate and use be used by different
For me,
structures in
before
the
you even
cell.
go there, my mind starts to think about, okay, what kind of nutrition do we need to kind of make sure that RBCs are high and all that kind of stuff? And it's like it's
Yeah, correct. It's one of those things where like, okay, so if you're not getting enough iron in your diet, you're not going to be able to make enough hemoglobin correctly in the blood. So then the blood is not going to be able to be stabilized by green light very well because you're not going to. So, for example, iron and copper are big time players in this system. Iron, specific. Well, let's go back to copper. Copper is blue, right? What does that mean? That means it absorbs red, right? It absorbs infrared light and it makes it cut off at a certain frequency. Um, Iron, on the other hand, has a completely different absorption spectrum, and that's going to be what stabilizes hemoglobin. So you're right, diet plays a role in here, but it's very, um, for example, to get the formation of red blood cells correctly, you're going to need more than just copper and iron. You're going to need all the cofactors, right, that are related to absorbing those minerals or elements, you more accurately said, and put them in the right places in the body, right? So B vitamins are big cofactors in iron metabolism in the bone marrow and things of that nature. So the right diet plays a role, but it's more secondarily, right? As long as the system is getting the right type of light, you're gonna get those things because um, your cells are already formed, right? When I'm talking about nutrition or things of that nature, that means that do you have the raw materials for the body to actually make the things? So think of it like you're building a brick house, and nutrition is all the material arriving at the job site. That doesn't mean that you're going to have a house. You're just going to have a pile of stuff, right? So what are the workers? What are they like? How do they get their instructions to build the structure that you want, right? How do they know that? And that is what biophysics is. And that is completely governed by frequencies. Certain frequencies tell certain structures in the body to do certain things. That's the way you need to think about this, right? And so, for example, infrared light, 600 to 850 nanometer light, affects the mitochondria, increases ATP production. It also causes vasodilation. And then at the same time, nitric oxide is produced by UV light. And so the combination of infrared and UV light is probably the biggest thing that most people are missing in terms of healing frequencies. We also know that 380 nanometer light, so if we go up to this right here, 380 is UVA, right? UVA goes from 315 to 400. 380 nanometer light turns on mTOR, irrelevant of protein intake, irrelevant of exercise, because mTOR, most people in the fitness industry know as like the anabolic pathway, or if you want to call it that, or which is true, right? But anabolism is not just building muscle tissue; it's building anything, right? It's that is what anabolism is to build anything
what
from
you mean by that is your enzymes and all that kind of stuff, right?
yeah. And so in order to heal, right, you need to rebuild, right? And so if you're not turning on mTOR, you're not going to do that correctly.
When is the
And
best time of the day to get this?
in the morning, UVA light needs to be coupled with a lot of red light because mTOR anabolism requires a lot of energy. What did I just say before this? Infrared light produces more ATP than any other light. We know this from studies specifically on red light. Red light increases ATP production. So if you want to turn on mTOR with 380 nanometer light, it should always be paired with infrared light. That infrared light is going to provide the energy upregulation of the body, and the UVA light is going to produce the signaling pathway to increase anabolism and healing peptides.
Let
So
me
you
throw you an example. Somebody has a sore elbow. You would tell them what to do in this specific area. Do some infrared light and then,
Yeah, so the ideal scenario is you find some time, again, we would have to be specific. Where do they live? What time of the year it is, and stuff like that. And you would find the zone of the day where you get UVA and infrared light. It's going to be in the morning, and that shift is going to be anywhere from in the winter time at high latitudes, anywhere between,
mm,
well, that's even if you get UV light, right? So, like I said, you got to be specific. Um, let's just make a easy example. Right now in the summer in the northern hemisphere, that time zone is going to be between 7:30 in the morning and 9:30 in the morning. Right. So you have a 2 hour window in there where if you go outside, you're going to turn on a lot of healing frequencies for the whole body, right? If you have a sore elbow, then make sure that your elbow gets exposed to these things. The other thing that infrared light does, in order to make more ATP, it makes cellular water. Ideally, that is deuterium depleted water. What is infrared water? Or, I mean, what is deuterium depleted water going to do? It is going to absorb more red light. Why? Because water is a red light chromophore, right? So it's going to make you expand your capacity to absorb more red light, not just for energy right then when you're out, but if you get enough of it, you're going to store that energy in water structures in the body. And that's going to provide energy for a lot longer than just the moments that you're outside. Um,
so can I give
so
a scenario? Somebody wakes up, they do their cardio. Obviously, their body has produced now deuterium depleted water, and they do it outside. They are less likely to have sore joints than someone who does it inside.
100%, 100%. That no question about it.
Which
That
I see, we know when we've talked about how I do stuff, like it makes a lot of sense why I don't get injured.
Yeah, yeah, because you're increasing water networks, you're increasing the capacity to store energy, and if it's in the morning, you're going to get a large amount of red light, which is going to increase water. It's going to increase energy production. And then if you get a little bit of UV light a little bit later in the morning or even into the midday, then you're going to initiate repair instructions for the cell.
Can you enhance this with some kind of nutritional strategy on top of all this as well?
This specific pathway can be enhanced with deuterium depleted water. So it's not really nutrition, it's
Right.
about enhancing that heat sink of infrared light. You're not like you're talking about, some people will jump to like, oh, collagen, peptides, what with curcumin, all these other
Yeah.
nutrition supplements slash whatever to enhance, joint rebuilding. And those are just like the other part of the nutrition where those are building blocks. If you don't have them, you need them, right? So they're not really going to enhance them. It's more of do you even have the ability to rebuild those structures? And if you don't have that in your nutritional strategy, then the answer is going to be no matter how hard you signal, you're not going to be able to rebuild. Um, so I wouldn't call them enhancing. They are prerequisites to do the job,
Right.
right? And so that's probably a better way to word it. Nothing in here is going to enhance that other than deuterium depleted water because you're basically going to get a double whammy. You're going to make your own deuterium depleted water by getting infrared light and UV light. And if you drink deuterium depleted water, now you're going to enhance that further.
Hmm. And if people have actually watched all of our videos, then it makes sense why people who live far up north kind of recover quicker and are little, well, not little, a lot stronger than most people who live in really advanced cities and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the reason for that is now let's get into that. That ties a little bit into how cold exposure also increases infrared light, but it does it natively, meaning from within your own body, right? Because red light, 600 to 850, that is going to be produced, or it can be produced by the mitochondria as heat, your body heat. You are a mammal, you're a warm-blooded creature. You are, when you get cold exposure, it upregulates the production of infrared light because that's required to run the system correctly.
Mhm.
So when you get cold exposure, you're going to get a lot of infrared production internally. On top of that, most water at northern altitudes and latitudes are going to be more deuterium depleted. So the water that you're naturally drinking, especially if it's from a well or from a natural spring, is going to be deuterium depleted to some extent. Um, and so that's going to enhance that effect. And then a little bit of UV light goes a long way. The more infrared light you have, the less or the more efficient you become with the UV side of things.
Mm. What about like creativity and those kind of things? Can we have any do which of these frequencies can enhance someone's ability to stay focused and things like that? Because that's a big part of what everyone really misses out. When they start working out, let's be honest, most of the people we work with, yes, they are focused on looking good, but they are more importantly focused on performing well.
Yeah, that's going to come in the middle of the day, right here, right? Phenylalanine and tyrosine. Where what do they eventually turn into if you're doing everything correctly? Dopamine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, neurotransmitters that enhance cognitive thinking, right? And pattern recognition and those sorts of things. What do phenylalanine and tyrosine absorb? They absorb 220 to 300 nanometer light. That's not light that you can get from the sun. That's below that range. So how does that happen? It happens by, let me see if I have I might not have it here, but, well, right here, right? It happens as a semiconductor. UV light 380 UVA, UVB, the stuff that's coming from the sun, can get transformed down. What does this, right? This little structure, what is doing that? Melanin. Melanin is doing that. Melanin is transforming, it's acting as a semiconductor and stepping up the energy or stepping down the nanometers, whichever way you want to look at it, of the UV light that you can produce internally, right? So when would that happen? 380 nanometer light and below is going to be UVA and UVB. That's middle of the day. We have studies that confirm this. Humans are optimized to work the best, right? If you have a cognitive task, a mental thing that you need to really get done that's really mentally heavy, you are going to perform the best around the middle of the day, especially if you're getting sunlight. It's no question about it. The reason for that is because you're absorbing UV light in the 380 nanometer range and below, all the way down to about 300. And if you have melanin, which you should, right, unless you're being affected by non-native electromagnetic fields, you're going to be able to step down that energy down all the way down to the 220 range. And that is what's going to be absorbed by all of these structures that I talked about. Tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine. Those are all going to be able to absorb from 220 all the way to 280. And that's going to start this cascade of creating dopamine, right? So
So when you work with somebody, do you have like a minimal times that you would ask somebody to expose themselves to this type of light midday? And how much uh, surface of the skin does it take to get the benefits? Is it enough
yeah,
to
so
be outside? Because a
to
lot of people will work for big companies. They can't go outside and strip half naked. So,
Well, so that's literally tied into this equation. The more skin you have exposed, the less time you need. The less skin you have exposed, the more time you need, right? So let's and we have studies on this, right? We know that in order to kind of let's think of this more like a meal, right? There is a limit to how much you can eat. Everybody has a limit, right? Like in one city, right? And the thing that dictates the limit is how strong is the sun outside and how much skin is exposed, right? So for example, let's just stick to the summertime. This is where everybody's at right now, and at least in the northern hemisphere. If you were to step outside in your shorts, that means your upper body is completely exposed and 90% of your lower body is exposed. Then you're only going to need about 30 minutes in the middle of the day, right? And that's with a UV index of like 9 or higher, right? You're only going to need about 30 minutes. And that will get the job done. If your face and your arms are exposed, that might be 4 hours
Right.
because you've gone from, I don't know, 85% of your body being exposed to only 20% or less of your body being exposed, right? So that matters. That matters a lot. So when people, tell me that they spend a lot of time outside, but we look at their vitamin D level, right? And again, vitamin D is made by 380 nanometer light. So if I look at your vitamin D and you're telling me you go outside a lot and your vitamin D is very low, only two possibilities exist. You don't have enough deuterium depleted water in your body to create this process effectively, or too little skin is exposed to even create the thing to happen, right?
Mm.
So you're only outside and you only have your arms and your face exposed, right? Well, there isn't really anything there, enough surface area there, right? Even if you're sitting there for an hour or an hour and a half, you might need 4 or 5 hours to get the job done, right? And then we go a little bit further. Phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, histidine, these are amino acids. Where are they going to be in abundance? They're going to be in your intestinal tract. You ate these, right? These are not amino acids. These are not non-essential amino acids. They are essential amino acids. What does that mean? That means you can't make them. You have to eat them, right? And so these are going to be in the stomach when you do eat them. That's the first place they're going to be. If you never expose your stomach, you're not starting this process very effectively. You're going to have to, like, for example, if you only go outside and only your hands and face are exposed, the amino acids have to be digested. They have to be put in the bloodstream. And then only when they get into the blood flow of your arms and your face are they going to be able to be interacted with by sunlight.
So would you say you can increase this if you are going outside and let's say go for a walk instead of just sitting outside and sipping coffee?
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't have to be a walk. The walk will help because you're going to get more blood flow, right? But like if you really wanted to like jump up the efficiency, you go for a walk shirtless for 15 minutes, right? In 15 minutes, you can get it done if the sun is strong enough and you got enough skin exposed. Literally, and I literally have clients that work in an office that are high-end net worth individuals, CEOs, et cetera, and they take a lunch break, they leave the building, and they go to the nearest park for a walk around the park with their shirt off. 15, 20 minutes later, they come back to the office, put their shirt back on. Nobody knows the difference. And they've exploited this system to the maximum of their ability for the time that they have, right?
It reminds me of our last live call we had on School group when Kari was like, God damn it, I'm only one who's not outside.
Right, right. And that is what's going to, that's literally what's going to, like you mentioned a word, like how do you enhance this, right? And you have to understand enhancement means beyond what you're currently doing. That's what it means, right? So if you currently aren't doing a strategy like this, then just implementing that strategy, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes, is an enhancement, right? Um, and for example, the only way that I would like to say you're completely healthy, you don't really have anything wrong, but you do have some brain fog, you get tired during the day, especially in the afternoon, et cetera, and you're not doing this, doing something like this is going to make it almost non-existent as far as brain fog and capabilities further into the day. If you're already doing something like this and you want to augment it even further beyond what biology can do, that's where something like deuterium depleted water comes in, because that's not a thing that the body naturally gets, right? Like true deuterium depleted water is depleted down to like 25 parts per million, 50 parts per million. The best naturally deuterium depleted water is at the poles, right? North Pole and the Arctic Pole, the South Pole. The water there, it's been measured, gets down to 90 parts per million,
Mm.
right? So if you're consuming something that's 50 parts per million, 25 parts per million, 10 parts per million, that's an enhancement. That is not actually able to exist on this planet naturally. Um, and so that's when I would say, hey, you're already really good and you want to take it even further. That's where deuterium depleted water starts to shine. Now, at the same time, right, if you're somebody who's drinking chlorinated water and the water's 150 parts per million, that's the average across the planet as far as like um, normal water that's still good. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's just higher deuterium level. You need two things to happen. You need to deplete it down to about 120 or less. That's where biology functions the best. And that can only be done through the things that we've talked about: proper sunlight exposure, proper exercise so that you sweat it out, so that you can turn on the depletion mechanisms of bringing water that you're consuming, 150 parts per million, down to 120. If you can't do that, then some deuterium depleted water is going to be an enhancement in that particular scenario because you're currently operating at a much less efficient level and you're going to make it more efficient by bringing that deuterium level down. So that's how it ties into, frequencies and things of that nature. Now, something that I want to discuss: any frequency that's outside of this range is negative. It's negative for biology. It causes problems with communication. Because if you think about it, inside of the body, your body's trying to communicate effectively. Hey, what is the liver doing right now? And what should it be doing an hour from now? What is the brain doing right now? And what should it be doing an hour from now? And so on with every organ system. If you were to put these on like if you were to scale the body up, right? The liver is like where the sun is, and your brain is like where Pluto is. That's how far apart they are in terms of scale. There is no way you're going to communicate from the brain to the liver or to the gut or to the lungs effectively, if you think about it in a bigger scale like a planet, without light, right? We know that light travels at light speed. What is the body using internally to communicate? Light. It's using light because it's the only way to communicate fast enough that even when the scale of how far apart things are in your body, they can still communicate very quickly,
Mm.
right? Um, so that is what's going on. And the best part is UV light, these short wavelengths of light, they don't travel very far. So the communication is very local, right? So everybody kind of understands that the body goes through restoration and catabolism and anabolism. Those don't happen all over the body at the same time. So, for example, your guts regenerate or go through catabolism and regeneration while you don't eat. That's at night. During the day, they can't go through that because you are eating,
Mm.
right? So their anabolism and catabolism stages are probably flipped compared to something like, let's put it like your skin, for example, right? Your skin probably doesn't regenerate at the same times that your gut does because it has a different schedule, right? Let's put it that way, right? Think of it like a industrial factory, right? There are workers that come in at night and they do certain jobs that the workers during the day do not do.
Mm.
That needs to be coordinated. That's what circadian mechanism is. How do you coordinate that effectively from organ system to organ system? By UV light, because UV light can be local to dictate processes in that organ system only. And when there isn't that process getting turned on, then it goes through regeneration. So everything in your body is regenerating and going through catabolism at different times of the day. That needs to be coordinated. If it's not coordinated effectively, then you end up with, hey, I don't go through autophagy in this organ system effectively every day. And then that starts to fail. That's how you get a cancer in your liver, for example, or your pancreas, for example, because it's not actively going through these modes of restoration when it should be, and that can be disturbed by anything outside of these frequencies. So that leads us to things like, electromagnetic fields from Wi-Fi, or electromagnetic fields from the electrical grid. Those are all outside of this range, and they mess with communication inside of cells. Now, at the same time, right, if you are properly hydrated, once the signal of 380 nanometer light is kicked on, in other words, mTOR is kicked on to regenerate, what is going to cause the actual regeneration, right? Like, how does the cells know to turn into a liver cell or a pancreas cell or a brain cell or any of those things? And that is low level electrical currents. That's where you have acupuncture with very low level electrical stimulation coming in. We know this from Dr. Robert O. Becker. Dr. Robert O. Becker demonstrated that low level, I think it was like down to like zero point 0.3 microvolts is what regenerates tissues, right? That's incredibly low. You can't actually feel that type of current, but that's what he demonstrated, is that that is how regeneration gets done. We know this from amphibians. That's how we started. Amphibians, if you cut off their limb, they can regenerate a whole limb. They do it through this very low level of electromagnetic, of electrical current. Now, amphibians are way more water dense than you and I. So they can tune down the electrical system very easily. So if you're dehydrated, you're going to have a hard time regenerating anything,
Mm.
right? So that's where infrared light becomes incredibly valuable. That comes down to the deuterium level in your body. If it's too high, you're not going to be able to actually turn down that current that down to a microcurrent very effectively. So there's a lot of things in there that are just kind of integrated, right? Like if you're not getting it all done correctly, um, your body just doesn't work that well. It can't, that doesn't mean you fall apart right away. It means that over decades, you start to degrade faster than you think you should. Like we've all known people that basically work outside all day long, all their life, and they live until they're 80, 90 years old. They don't really have
And what
those
you mean
abilities.
by live until 80, 90, you mean they are physically active, they still can work at that age, not just.
Yeah. Not that you're alive and sitting in a chair all day long. I mean, these people are walking around, talking, cognitively sharp, 87 years old, 97 years old. And you look at their past history and they're people that grew up working outside, being outside all the time. That means they staved off the falling apart until very late into their life, right? You start doing that type of stuff early, well, you're going to age faster because regeneration isn't going to happen as quickly or as effectively. And so you start falling apart at 60 or 50, because you are not effectively turning on the regeneration protocols in the body, or you are not able to turn down that current because you're too dehydrated. You've lost too much ability to create water in your body. That is incredibly important. Like there's a reason why when you're born, you're like 80, 90% water, right? You still have to form a brain. You still have to grow organs. You still have to do that's regeneration. You are going to, from the moment you come out of the womb until you're fully matured, that's like 20 something years, right? Your brain is not fully myelinated, fully developed until you're like 25. That's why you can't rent a car from an insurance. Like an insurance will not rent you a car until you are 24 or 25. I can't remember the age there. You physically can't do that.
Hmm.
Why? Because your frontal lobes aren't completely formed until then. You can't actually do critical thinking at that point.
Yeah, we know by that age you don't really have any moral values set up as well. Uh,
Yeah.
if anyone listened to this, it's like there are so many takeaways. You can literally transform your life just from this one video. But there's
Yeah,
a lot to unpack.
and it's not hard, right? Like basically what I'm saying, like if you were to forget the whole frequency thing and all of that type of stuff, basically what I'm saying is make time to get outside and expose as much of your body to sunlight periodically throughout the day. It really is that simple in terms of getting the right frequencies. On the flip side, if you live somewhere where there's a lot of frequencies outside of that range, inside of a city, then you're going to have a lot of electromagnetic fields that are outside that range interacting with you. And you just want to minimize how much they interact with you, specifically when most of the body regenerates, which is at nighttime, right? At nighttime is when you want to make sure that those frequencies are not interacting with you nearly as much, as close to zero as you can get it. So that's going to be basically in your home, in your bedroom.
This was well, this is a lot to digest for anyone who's listened. A lot of value, a lot of big takeaways. Uh, People just need to take this seriously. We both have seen how it affects people. Somebody just asked me today how I've been on holiday because I'm so well tanned. I'm like, no, I'm just exposing myself to this specific thing. We definitely live and breathe what's discussed in all these videos. So,
Yeah,
and it makes huge difference. So appreciate your time as usual, David. We'll digest more stuff in next videos. There is a lot more to kind of tap into, specifically like sleep and all those kind of things, which more and more people struggle even more, funnily,
yes.
you know. So thanks again, and I'll see you next video.
Awesome. Thank you.